In a jaw-dropping twist that's shaking both Washington and Westminster to the core, Elon Musk has officially quit America. Yes, the billionaire tech titan has moved the headquarters of his groundbreaking artificial intelligence company, xAI, straight to the heart of London. But it's what came next that left the world speechless. Musk launched a blistering attack on British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, publicly demanding his immediate removal from office. The reason? A growing political storm over censorship, surveillance, and backdoor deals that Musk claims threaten free speech, innovation, and democracy itself. What Musk just exposed could not only derail Starmer's career, but also ignite a global tech and political revolution. The world watched in stunned silence as Elon Musk, the man behind Tesla, SpaceX, and X, formerly Twitter, delivered a thunderous declaration that no one saw coming. Speaking to a crowd of journalists and tech insiders from the steps of a high-security building in central London, Musk revealed that his artificial intelligence firm, xAI, would no longer operate out of the United States. In a move he described as necessary for humanity's future, Musk accused the US government of turning into an oppressive surveillance state. But the shock didn't stop there. His next target was Keir Starmer. Without hesitation, Musk claimed Starmer had allowed Britain to become a testing ground for digital tyranny, citing insider leaks and classified communications between UK intelligence agencies and big tech firms. According to Musk, these communications exposed a disturbing plan, an alliance between Labour-led Britain and certain American officials to enforce aggressive AI censorship laws, monitor private communications, and control online speech under the guise of public safety. Musk insisted that such policies would not only choke technological advancement, but also crush the very freedoms that gave rise to the modern digital revolution. He said, "Britain was once the cradle of free thought. Under Starmer, it's becoming a prison for the mind." With those words, the atmosphere in the room turned electric. Analysts and political operatives scrambled to process the implications. A tech war had just been declared, against a sitting Prime Minister. Musk's choice to relocate xAI to London was not made lightly. Insiders revealed that negotiations had been quietly underway for months, involving key members of Parliament, foreign policy analysts, and top engineers. But the timing of the announcement, just days after the UK quietly passed a controversial digital safety accord, was no coincidence. This accord, championed by Starmer's inner circle, granted sweeping powers to government agencies to oversee AI development, track digital interactions, and shut down platforms deemed harmful to national unity. Critics had already raised concerns about the accord's Orwellian undertones, but Musk's intervention has now blown the debate wide open. The billionaire's allegations include claims that under Starmer's leadership, UK intelligence agencies began secretly working with big tech to develop real-time monitoring systems capable of flagging and removing content that diverges from government-approved narratives. Sources close to Musk say he was shown classified material by a whistleblower embedded in a government AI task force. Documents that outlined a chilling framework for algorithmic control of public discourse, particularly around topics like Brexit, immigration, and national identity. "This is not innovation," Musk declared. "It's information warfare, and the people of the UK and the world deserve to know who is pulling the strings." Predictably, Starmer's team has scrambled to contain the fallout. Within hours of Musk's announcement, the Prime Minister's office issued a generic statement calling the accusations baseless and insisting that the UK remains committed to ethical technology development. But the damage was already done. The story exploded across global media outlets, with headlines declaring an all-out collision between Silicon Valley's most unpredictable visionary and Britain's rising political star. In Parliament, opposition MPs demanded an emergency session to debate the revelations, while backbench Labour members privately expressed outrage over being left in the dark. Even some within Starmer's cabinet were reportedly blindsided by Musk's claims, and more critically, by the documents he hinted at possessing. Financial markets also felt the tremors. UK-based tech stocks took a noticeable hit, while investors poured money into xAI, betting on its success under Musk's unshackled leadership abroad. At the same time, pro-democracy groups, digital rights advocates, and free speech organisations praised Musk for standing up to what they called a creeping authoritarian regime masquerading as progressive policy. On social media, the hashtag Musk v Starmer began trending globally within minutes as users demanded full transparency and immediate government accountability. The mood was no longer just one of political outrage, it was a rebellion brewing in real time. Perhaps most striking was Musk's explicit call for Starmer's removal. He didn't mince words. "A leader who fears truth should never lead a democracy," he said. "Keir Starmer must go." The declaration stunned even Musk's allies, as it crossed a line that few tech CEOs have ever dared to approach: direct interference in the political process of a sovereign nation. But Musk, known for his disregard of convention, stood firm. In his view, the stakes were too high to remain silent. This is not about politics. This is about whether the next generation lives free or lives programmed. Already, insiders suggest Musk has met with members of the Reform UK party, several Tory strategists, and international figures aligned with populist, pro-sovereignty causes. While details remain scarce, rumours are swirling that Musk plans to fund or support political movements that defend free speech and oppose what he calls AI tyranny. Whether this marks the beginning of Musk's full-blown entry into the political arena remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: his words have struck a nerve. Across the Atlantic, Washington's response has been muted, with Biden administration officials declining to comment publicly. However, leaked diplomatic cables suggest deep concern over Musk's revelations and their impact on US-UK tech alliances. One official reportedly warned that if Musk proves what he's claiming, this could lead to an unprecedented breakdown in international trust regarding AI governance. For now, the eyes of the world are locked on London, where a tech tycoon's crusade has triggered a firestorm that could reshape the future of global innovation and perhaps topple a prime minister. As the dust from Elon Musk's bombshell settled, the political aftershocks across the UK grew more severe by the hour. Keir Starmer's government was thrust into full-blown crisis mode as civil liberties groups, tech watchdogs, and political opponents demanded answers about the alleged secret alliance between Whitehall and multinational tech giants. Whispers of internal dissent within the Labour Party turned into open defiance, with several MPs breaking ranks to call for an independent inquiry into the so-called Digital Safety Accord. Meanwhile, public confidence in Starmer's leadership began to collapse under the weight of growing suspicions, fueled not just by Musk's claims, but by a sudden and disturbing wave of media blackouts and digital content takedowns, eerily consistent with the censorship Musk warned about. Within 24 hours of Musk's announcement, several journalists and whistleblowers reported that their online posts critical of the UK's AI policy were being suppressed or outright removed. One well-known political commentator revealed in a livestream that his emails and documents relating to a pending investigation into UK surveillance programmes had mysteriously vanished from his cloud storage. Coincidence? Or a sign that Musk's warnings were coming true? The timing was too perfect to ignore. Digital rights organisations like OpenTech UK and Liberty sounded the alarm, accusing the government of using AI-enhanced systems to target dissent in real time. What had been labelled as misinformation filtering now appeared to be an apparatus of control. Inside Westminster, panic was palpable. A leaked internal memo from Labour's communications team revealed plans to pivot public attention away from the Musk scandal by framing him as an unstable foreign provocateur with business motives. But the attempt backfired spectacularly. Screenshots of the memo surfaced online, triggering further outrage and reinforcing the narrative that the government was more interested in silencing critics than defending democratic values. Former ministers, including some from Starmer's own party, began appearing on political talk shows demanding that the Prime Minister come clean about what his administration is doing behind the public's back. The Labour government's promise of transparency was now viewed as hollow, a political soundbite with no substance. Meanwhile, Elon Musk didn't back down. Instead, he doubled down. In a live interview broadcast across several major platforms, Musk pulled out what he called Stage 1 proof, an encrypted email chain allegedly between UK tech regulators and executives from multiple AI labs, including one based in Brussels. These emails discussed plans to create a harm index score for all UK residents based on their digital activity. According to the emails, this score would influence everything from credit ratings to job applications and even access to healthcare. Musk stared directly into the camera and said, "This isn't fiction, it's happening. And if we let it continue, every person watching this will become nothing more than data to be shaped and scored by machines." Public reaction was instant and explosive. Tens of thousands took to the streets in spontaneous protests across London, Manchester, Birmingham, and Edinburgh. The chants were deafening. Starmer must go. No to AI tyranny. Musk exposed the truth. Protesters held signs comparing the Prime Minister to Orwellian dictators, and demanding a rollback of the Digital Safety Accord. The scenes were chaotic but powerful. Millions of citizens, fueled by fear and fury, rising against what they now viewed as a betrayal of British values. Starmer's government had hoped to push the digital legislation quietly through Parliament, but Musk's intervention had thrown a wrench into the plan, dragging the issue into the unforgiving light of public scrutiny. At the same time, the intelligence community began to fracture. Anonymous sources from within GCHQ and MI5 began leaking damaging information about the extent of their involvement in the AI oversight programs. One insider revealed that some surveillance systems had already been quietly deployed in metropolitan areas under the guise of smart city and improvements. These systems, using AI and facial recognition, were reportedly capable of tracking individual behaviour, identifying patterns deemed antisocial, and flagging citizens for digital observation. The implications were chilling. If Musk's claims were true, and now even the intelligence leaks seemed to support them, Britain was on the verge of becoming the most watched society in Western Europe, if not the world. But perhaps the most devastating development came not from Musk, but from within the Labour Party itself. A senior Labour MP and former ally of Starmer released a damning open letter calling for Starmer's resignation. The letter accused the Prime Minister of knowingly authorising covert surveillance operations against the British public and betraying the trust placed in him by voters. It went on to claim that Starmer had been warned by advisers that such policies would provoke backlash, but chose to proceed regardless, allegedly under pressure from foreign tech lobbyists and EU officials desperate to export their digital governance models to Britain post-Brexit. This was no longer just a feud between a billionaire and a politician. It had escalated into a national reckoning over who truly controlled the future of British society, its elected leaders or the invisible hand of global tech empires. As more MPs began to question their support for Starmer's leadership, murmurs of a possible no-confidence vote began to swirl through Westminster's corridors. And across the Atlantic, lawmakers in the US began calling for their own investigations into whether American intelligence had collaborated with Britain on joint censorship initiatives. Musk's move to London was now seen not as a business decision, but as a declaration of war against the very forces trying to mould society through digital coercion. His demand for Starmer's removal, once dismissed as outlandish, was now echoed in the halls of Parliament, on the streets, and across millions of British homes. The Prime Minister, who once promised unity and progressive leadership, was now facing the greatest political crisis of his career, one ignited not by a vote, but by a single man's refusal to stay silent. The question was no longer whether Musk's claims had merit. It was whether Keir Starmer could survive the storm that had just begun. As the crisis spiralled out of control, Number 10 Downing Street was transformed into a fortress under siege, both politically and metaphorically. Keir Starmer, once hailed as the man who would restore stability and trust in post-Brexit Britain, now found himself standing on rapidly crumbling ground. The calls for his resignation were no longer limited to street protests and opposition parties. They were now echoing through his own cabinet. Rumours began to swirl that several senior ministers were holding secret late-night meetings, assessing contingency plans should Starmer refuse to step down. One high-ranking insider allegedly told a political reporter that the ship is sinking and no one wants to go down with the captain. At the heart of the political firestorm was Elon Musk's damning claim that Starmer had actively collaborated with global tech elites to implement a surveillance state under the guise of digital progress. The documents Musk revealed were now being scrutinised by independent analysts, cyber law experts, and even former intelligence officers. What they found sent shockwaves through the establishment. The so-called Digital Harm Index, previously dismissed as a conspiracy theory, was confirmed to have been in experimental trials within NHS-linked systems and government-funded AI safety programs. These programs were allegedly scanning online behaviour, flagging risk individuals, and quietly logging behavioural scores into a centralised database. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. What was presented to Parliament as a harmless AI oversight initiative had mutated into a terrifying mechanism of digital control. Civil liberties watchdogs described the system as pre-crime in all but name, warning that the UK was on the brink of abandoning centuries of legal precedent in favour of algorithmic authoritarianism. By now, the narrative was shifting dramatically. This wasn't just about Musk's opinions or ambitions. It was about evidence, facts, and a slow-burning plan that had finally been exposed in its raw dystopian form. In a desperate move to salvage his credibility, Starmer appeared for a hastily arranged press conference. But the event only deepened the public's outrage. Standing before a row of reporters, he dismissed Musk's accusations as erratic outbursts from a tech mogul with a personal vendetta. Yet when pressed on the leaked emails, the Digital Harm Index, and the secret AI testing programs, Starmer dodged, deflected, and stumbled through a series of vague answers. His refusal to categorically deny the existence of the AI database became the headline across every major outlet. The man who once championed truth and transparency now stood exposed as either a liar or a pawn of forces beyond his control. As Starmer's leadership continued to deteriorate, Elon Musk wasn't finished. He escalated the campaign by releasing a 90-page internal briefing document from xAI's former US compliance partners. The report detailed instances of the UK government allegedly attempting to suppress technological innovation that did not align with EU regulatory frameworks, including direct pressure on companies to adopt surveillance-friendly architectures. The most damning claim was that Labour ministers had met with European Commission officials in secret to ensure post-Brexit Britain remained functionally aligned with Brussels' controversial AI Act, even though the UK had publicly distanced itself from it. Musk's statement accompanying the leak was chilling. This is not sovereignty, it's betrayal in slow motion. The backlash was immediate and overwhelming. The so-called digital rebellion reached new heights as independent MPs began publicly calling for a parliamentary inquiry and criminal investigations into Starmer's inner circle. Thousands of emails reportedly flooded the offices of MPs across all parties, demanding immediate action to halt all AI programs associated with the secretive digital accord. A bipartisan coalition began to form within Parliament, seeking to bring forward emergency legislation to freeze all government-backed AI surveillance systems until a full inquiry could be completed. It was a political earthquake that no one had anticipated, driven by a figure who didn't even hold a seat in British politics. Outside Westminster, the mood was boiling. Protests transformed into organised occupations.
In London, activists chained themselves to the gates of the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, while in Birmingham and Leeds, government data centres were surrounded by demonstrators waving banners that read, "We are not your data points," and "Stop the AI state." Social media exploded with viral campaigns using hashtags like Chuck Stop Starmer AI and Digital Betrayal. The uprising was no longer fringe, it was mainstream, powered by disillusioned citizens across class, region, and political affiliation. Musk, now hailed by many as a freedom champion, continued to amplify the cause, warning that this moment would decide whether the UK would remain free or fall under algorithmic rule. Meanwhile, cracks in the security establishment widened. A former MI6 analyst came forward anonymously through a protected platform, claiming that multiple internal reports had warned the government that their AI surveillance model would provoke civil unrest and likely violate the European Convention on Human Rights. The analyst accused Starmer's leadership of suppressing these findings, prioritising alignment with EU tech policy over constitutional and ethical boundaries. The leak was devastating. It confirmed that concerns had been raised, but willfully ignored. And just when things seemed they couldn't worsen for Starmer, another betrayal struck from within his own office. A senior advisor resigned live on air during a BBC interview, citing gross ethical violations and systemic deception within the Prime Minister's team. The advisor added, "This government has crossed a line from digital governance into digital tyranny. I can no longer be part of it." That single statement ricocheted through the political arena, sending shockwaves through an already fractured administration. At this point, the markets began to react. The pound slipped sharply against major currencies, and several international tech investors pulled out of UK-based AI projects. News outlets from the US, Australia, and even the EU began framing Britain not as a model of innovation, but as a cautionary tale of how democratic institutions can be manipulated under the guise of safety. Starmer's political capital, once immense, was now spent. His allies were vanishing, his narrative had collapsed, and the people were no longer listening. The digital revolt had taken on a life of its own. If this explosive revelation shook you to the core, don't stay silent. Hit that like button to show your support for truth and accountability. Subscribe now so you never miss another story the mainstream media won't dare to cover, and most importantly, share this video with everyone you know. Let the world see what's really happening behind closed doors. The fight for freedom has just begun, and your voice matters.